Sometimes people ask me, Jim, what is wealth? And I say, it is not about having much. It is when you are no longer controlled by fear. Sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? Let me explain. There was a time when I didn't dare step into my house because I didn't have enough money to buy ice cream for my daughter. He stood outside, hesitating, ashamed, fumbling with a few coins. In that moment, I realized poverty is not just about lacking money. Poverty is when fear rules your mind. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being judged. Fear of failure. Fear of facing yourself. When you live in fear, you are not free, no matter how many digits are in your bank account. I used to believe that if I earned enough money, fear would disappear. But then I met people far wealthier than me, with houses, cars, and fame, yet their eyes were still anxious, their sleep restless. They had everything but knew peace. So I began to ask, what truly defines wealth? I discovered this. Wealth is when you can live each day with a clear mind, a light heart, and free from the grip of old fears. Wealth is when you are no longer a slave to impulsive emotions, unhealed pasts, or others' opinions. Wealth is mastery. You see, we all experience fear. Fear of not being good enough, fear of rejection, fear of making mistakes. The difference lies here. A poor mindset lets fear control actions. A wealthy mindset learns to observe fear, name it, and walk alongside it without letting it take the wheel. I often use this image. You are the driver of your life's car. Fear can sit in the passenger seat, but never give it the steering wheel. If you let it drive, it will take you on detours, full of obstacles, never reaching where you need to go. Fear doesn't need to vanish. It just needs to be put in its place. I've worked with thousands of students, from entrepreneurs to college kids, from employees to leaders. I found one common thread. Truly successful people all have a moment of transformation. When they face their greatest fear and choose not to let it dictate their future. Some feared public speaking, but they practiced their voice, stood up, and turned that fear into a tool for inspiration. Some feared starting a business, but they began small, learned from mistakes, and built their own empires. Some feared loneliness, but in solitude, they heard the true voice of their soul. You see, wealth is not about having everything. It's about no longer being bound by fear when you want to do what's right. Wealth is when you can say no to an unsuitable offer without fear of being left behind. It's when you can share your heart without fear of being misunderstood. It's when you can change your path without fear of others calling it failure. And wealth is when you can smile in the face of hardship, knowing you are no longer a victim of circumstances, but a creator of them. Here's what I want you to take away today. Start measuring your wealth, not just by what you have, but by what you no longer fear. If yesterday you were afraid to speak your truth, and today you dare to, you are already wealthier. If yesterday you avoided responsibility, and today you take it on, you are wealthier. Wealth is not a destination. It's a journey. Each day a step, breaking free from fear's grip and stepping into mastery of your life. Don't wait until you have everything to feel enough. Start feeling enough. So each step you take can plant something valuable. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of today? Then act against that fear just a little. Enough to remind yourself, you are no longer the old you, because when you are no longer controlled by fear, no matter how much you have, you are already wealthy. I used to think poverty was having no money in my pocket, but the more I lived, the more I observed, the more I realized some people have plenty of money, yet are still poor. They are rich in bank accounts, but poor in inner freedom. They have enough to live well, but they still fear of being toppled, fear of loss, fear of not being loved for who they are. And then I understood, wealth is not a number. Wealth is a state of mind when you are no longer driven by fear, anxiety, or the constraints of the outside world. You can have the best car in town, but if you can't say what you truly think, you are not free. If you can't take a different path because you fear gossip, you are in a beautiful cage, but still a cage. I call that poverty in the guise of wealth. And millions live this way because they never stop to ask, what is really driving me each day? Let me share a memory I'll never forget. I was young, newly married, financially unstable, and always feeling not good enough. One day, I came home with just a few coins in my pocket. My daughter ran to the door, eyes sparkling, and said, "Daddy, did you buy me ice cream today?" I looked at her. Then at my pocket, I didn't have enough, and I lied, a clumsy lie. The shop was closed today. Sweetie, that night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I couldn't afford ice cream, but because I had no choice. I couldn't do a small thing for someone I loved because I had lived too long letting circumstances control me. I feared failure, feared trying new things, feared rejection. And those fears kept me from learning, acting, or rising up. I was poor not because of money, but because my mind was imprisoned. The next day, I looked in the mirror and said to myself, enough. Either keep living like this or become someone my daughter can be proud of. From that day, I started rebuilding from the ground up. I didn't learn how to make money first. I learned how to master my mind. I read books on psychology, values, thinking. I practiced speaking, standing in front of the mirror without avoiding myself. I learned to work hard, not to escape poverty, but to step out of a poverty mindset. You see, true wealth is not in big houses, fancy cars, or titles. It's in your ability to face yourself and no longer be afraid. You can stand in a crowded room and say, I'm not perfect, but I'm moving forward. You can say no without justifying. You can dare to love, dare to fail, dare to start again. Because you know, fear no longer holds your hand. The truly wealthy are not those who never feel fear. They've just learned to name it, smile at it, and walk past it. Fear is part of the journey. It's like your shadow in the sunlight. The closer you move toward the light, the clearer you see it, but you also know it can't harm you unless you turn back and step into the darkness. Ask yourself, what's holding me back each day? Maybe it's fear of rejection, fear of ridicule, fear of not being good enough. And you think, when I have enough money, I'll be more confident. But no, you need to start from within, because confidence doesn't come from results. It comes from knowing you're doing what's right. Freedom doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from your ability to control your response to them. Today, I invite you to do a simple exercise. Write down 3 things you're still afraid of. Then ask, if I were no longer afraid of this, what would I do differently? Would you start a project? Say, I love you? End a toxic relationship? Write it down. And tomorrow, do one small thing, just one, to step out of that invisible cage. Because you deserve to live a wide open life, not controlled by fear, but guided by clarity. I don't promise this journey is easy, but I promise it's worth it. Because once you step out of fear's control, you don't just become wealthier. You become free. And that's something no one can take from you. No matter how the world changes, no matter if you lose everything else. And remember, wealth is not what you have. It's what you've let go of that no longer serves you, including fear, including the voice in your head that pulls you back every day. Listen to it, then move forward. The more you move, the wealthier you become. Not in gold or silver, but in the person you're becoming. That's the asset no one can steal. That's wealth, and you can start right now. No one is born knowing fear. As a child, you fell many times and didn't give up. You touched everything, asked hundreds of questions daily, sung loudly, laughed big, ran and jumped without permission. That courage was your instinct. Then, bit by bit, someone said, "Don't do that. Be quiet. You're not good enough. What if you fail?" And you began to shrink. From a curious child, you became a cautious adult, wary, doubting yourself. Fear doesn't arise in a single moment. It's built brick by brick. Each time you didn't speak your mind, nodded to avoid judgment, stayed silent when you should have spoken. Each time you sent a message to your mind, "I'm not enough." Over time, you didn't just believe it, you lived it. You chose safe jobs, kept half-hearted relationships, trimmed your dreams to fit a mold, and you called it growing up. But really, you were building a mental prison, paved with things you avoided. I've met men in their 52nd, sitting across from me in coaching sessions, crying. They said, "I don't know why I feel empty. I have a job, a family, a house, but I feel I've never truly lived." When I asked, "What did you want to do that you didn't?" they listed a long scroll. Start a business, learn music, travel alone, apologize to their parents. And why didn't they? Fear of failure, fear of no support, fear of no second chances. What they didn't realize, by avoiding fear, they let it silently steal their true life. The greatest fear isn't losing money or reputation. It's the quiet regret that each passing day, you're living further from the version you know you could be. It's the pain of silent doubt that you could do more, live, bolder, but didn't dare. You bury that feeling in busy work, movies, shopping, silent conversations. But it doesn't go away. It waits until one day, looking back, you ask, "Why did I let fear decide for me so many times?" I'm not writing this to make you feel guilty. I'm writing to wake you up. When you realize fear isn't natural, it's programmed. You can reprogram it, but that requires something hard. Facing it directly, I often say, courage doesn't come from having no fear. It comes from choosing to face it, even when you're trembling. Imagine a garden. If you neglect it, don't weed it, what grows? Not roses, weeds. Fear is the same. If you don't guard your mind, watch your words, or control what you believe daily, fear grows like weeds. It creeps into every decision, reaction, unstarted dream, and if you do nothing, it will cover your whole life. I encourage you to start with a simple exercise. Whenever you're about to say, "I can't," stop and ask, is it really that I can't, or am I afraid? Write down what you're delaying and ask, if I weren't afraid, what would I do? Each day, choose one small act against fear. Afraid of judgment for sharing? Write a short post. Afraid of rejection in a partnership? Send one email. Afraid to voice your true opinion? Practice in a small group. Each small act is a statement to your mind. I am the master, not fear. The journey from fear to freedom isn't a leap. It's a series of small, steady intentional steps. It demands honesty with yourself, observing your thoughts, and daring to do what you've avoided. In return, you gain something money can't buy. The feeling of living true, no longer running, no longer wasting. In the end, you'll see. Fear isn't the enemy, it's a bell calling you back to the courage within. Don't let it control you. Listen to it, then move on. You weren't born to shrink. You were born to expand, grow, explore. When you start living that way, you are truly wealthy. No need to wait another day. Start today. Now, the moment you're ready to name your greatest fear and choose, it won't control you another day. One thing I've learned after decades of observing myself, teaching thousands, and hearing millions of stories of success and failure, most self-destructive behaviors don't come from ignorance of what's right, but from unconsciously avoiding some fear. The tragedy is the more you avoid, the deeper you sink. I once said, observe closely what you do when no one's watching. That's where you live most truly. If you're procrastinating, filling time with meaningless tasks, spending on things you don't need, or lashing out without reason, chances are you're dodging something bigger. Fear of not being enough, fear of rejection, fear of not being loved. I met a man at one of my workshops who kept changing jobs, never sustaining relationships, always saying, I'm looking for something better. After a deep conversation, I found the real issue. Whenever things got serious, he felt unworthy of them. Instead of facing that, he withdrew. He wasn't running from bad jobs or relationships. He was running from the fear within. I also met a brilliant woman with great potential, always complaining she had no time to write her dream book. When I asked, if I gave you a month free, would you write? She hesitated, then cried. She feared that writing would expose her true thoughts. She feared judgment, feared she wasn't as good as she thought. So she hid in busyness, a perfect excuse to avoid the spotlight. See, procrastination isn't just a time issue, it's an emotional one. Workaholism, phone addiction, being overly nice, or staying perpetually busy, all can be signs you're avoiding something real inside. The issue isn't the behavior, it's the root feeding it. I often say, if you want to change behavior, don't just change behavior. Find the fear, feeding it. What do you fear if you become organized? That others will expect more? That you'll lose your excuse for failure? What do you fear if you exercise daily, losing your reason to not love yourself? What do you fear if you pursue your passion? Learning your true limits? Look deep. What you call personality is sometimes just a survival strategy. The joker fears hurt. The angry one fears losing control. The people pleaser fears abandonment. The skeptic often hasn't learned to trust themselves. But you're not doomed to live this way forever. When you start questioning your actions, pausing before reacting, and asking, what am I avoiding here? You take the first steps out of unconsciousness. Only when you see the fear can you choose, let it drive or take back the wheel. I recall a friend who was a control freak. Everything had to go his way. When things didn't, he raged, blamed, and isolated himself. After years of breakdowns, he started therapy and discovered he feared dependency. He feared that trusting others would lead to abandonment. So he controlled to avoid being hurt first. But that control drove everyone away. He wasn't betrayed. He was betraying his own desire for connection. See, fear doesn't just shrink you. It makes you betray what you want. You want love, but fear hurt. You want freedom, but fear responsibility. You want success, but fear pressure. So You choose the opposite just to feel safe, but safety isn't where your life takes flight. Safety is a pit stop. You need to learn to fly. That journey begins not with a big decision, but with small courage, pausing, observing, naming what's really driving you, daring to ask, am I doing this because I choose it or because I'm afraid? If it's fear, you have a chance to change. Behavior doesn't come from nowhere. It's fed by belief. Belief is fed by experience. But you're no longer the child scolded, the teen rejected, the beginner who failed. You are you now with full awareness, maturity, and choice. That means you can change behavior by facing the truth within. When you start living from that truth, behavior transforms naturally. No force, no rigid discipline, because you're no longer running, you're moving toward. Each step is a step out of the invisible cage. Fear built around you. Remember, what repeats becomes habit. Habits born from fear create a small life. Habits born from truth create a strong person. You can choose that today. Now, with the next action you take, choose, because you want to live true. No more running, no more excuses, no more giving your life to habits that don't serve the real you. You deserve better, and you know it. I once asked my audience a simple question. If you knew cent percent you'd succeed, what would you do tomorrow? You know what happened? The room went silent. Not because they lacked dreams, but because for the first time, they realized what stopped them wasn't ability. It was the toxic comfort of safety. The so-called comfort zone is just where you know you won't face risk, disappointment, or judgment. It's like an old armchair, no longer comfortable, but familiar. It doesn't let you fly, but it doesn't let you fall. Day after day, you stay there, not moving forward, not falling back. You call it fine, but really, it's where dreams slowly rot. I lived in the comfort zone for my first 25 years. A salaried job, enough to live, enough to spend, enough to be grateful, but not enough to live my potential. Then one day, I met my first mentor. He didn't give me money or a success formula. He just asked, are you living or delaying living? That question woke me up. I realized what I called fine was just self-soothing to avoid a painful truth. I was living below myself. The comfort zone is a prison without bars. The door's unlocked. You can leave anytime, but you don't. Why? Because it's colder, riskier, less certain out there. But you forget life's rewards lie beyond that zone. Nothing truly valuable comes in comfort. A seed doesn't sprout in warm soil, it must crack open. A child doesn't grow if always carried, it must stumble. You're the same. No growth comes from doing what you know. You say, I'm not ready. When will you be? When fear is gone. That won't happen. Growth isn't fearlessness. It's acting despite fear. Readiness is an illusion. It comes after you move. When I gave my first lecture, I was shaking. I didn't feel confident, but I did it. Each step, each lesson, each mistake made me stronger. Confidence doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. I coached a young man with a brilliant idea, fierce passion, and solid skills, but he delayed for 3 years. Waiting for the right time, I told him, there's no perfect time. Only people who act in imperfect moments. When he finally moved, he didn't just grow his career, he broke the pattern of delay that had held back his life. What makes the comfort zone dangerous? It doesn't kill you outright. It lets you live half alive. It wakes you each morning with a vague sense you're missing something. without knowing what it makes you watch others soar while you sit quietly wishing. Worst of all, it makes you used to paralysis until it feels normal. Try this. Write down everything you want to do but haven't because you're not ready. Ask, what's the worst that could happen if I try? Then ask, what happens if I don't? The answer to that second question is the cost of delay. Don't wait until you're 70 to realize you lived in a velvet cage. By then, time isn't your friend, and regret can't be returned. Remember, the comfort zone is where you start, not where you stay. It's the starting line, not the finish. You weren't born to live in a box set by society, your past, or fear. You were born to be you, whole, boundless, true. That only happens when you step out of the familiar into where you truly belong. It may not be clear, it may not be steady, but I promise it's real, it's alive. It's where you'll find yourself. The first step isn't grand. Sometimes it's just daring to think differently, to question, to open the door, then step by step into the life waiting beyond your comfort zone. Are you ready? You don't need to be. Start, and readiness will catch up. I used to tell my students, you're not paid for the time you put in, but for the value you bring in that time. As usual, the room went quiet because this is one of the hardest truths in personal growth. If you haven't upgraded how you see your own value, your income will stay where you think you deserve. Some people work their whole lives and don't get ahead. They're diligent, honest, persistent, but stuck in just enough, not because society's unfair, not because of bad luck, but because inside they carry an outdated map of beliefs, labeling themselves. I'm only worth this much, and life believes them. Your career, relationships, financial opportunities, all orbit the ceiling you unconsciously set. Imagine a container. If it holds only 500 milliliter, no matter how much water you pour, the excess spills out. Your mind is the same. If your mental operating system is programmed for just enough bigger opportunities, even when they come, will be rejected, doubted, or sabotaged by you. I coached a man with great skills, a servant's heart, and natural leadership. When I asked how much he wanted to earn yearly, he said, maybe 50,000, enough for my family and some savings. I looked him in the eye and said, it's not that you're only worth 50,000, it's that you don't dare imagine you're worth more. We started from within, rewriting beliefs, clarifying core values, setting a vision. 3 years later, he multiplied his income by 5, not from luck, but because he finally allowed himself to receive more. See? Every external action stems from your internal image. If you think you're just a small employee, you'll act like one. Few initiatives, avoiding risks, not asking for more. But if you believe you create unique value, you'll act differently, learn more, engage boldly, grow without waiting for permission. That's why I always teach the most important investment isn't stocks, real estate, or funds. It's investing in expanding your perception of your own value. Read books, learn skills, connect with big thinkers, dreamers, not to be cooler, but to gather data, to redefine yourself. When you believe, I have something unique to give that no one else can, the world opens doors to match. One more thing, watch your language. If you often say, I'm not enough, you can't compare, that's not humility, it's self-limitation. Your words mirror how you value yourself. You'll never receive more from others than you allow yourself to receive. Some will think, but Jim, I don't have a fancy degree or a great background. Let me be clear. Your value isn't in your resume, but in your ability to learn, act, and serve. I was once a salesman with no degree, no direction, nearly broke. But I invested in my thinking. I learned to speak, write, see things from multiple angles, bit by bit. The value I could give grew. My income rose, not because someone pitied me, but because I became a person of greater value. As I've said, don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Don't beg the world to pay you more when you're not ready to be more valuable. When you raise your value, income follows. When you believe you're worthy, opportunities appear. When you walk like someone valuable, others treat you that way. Remember, income mirrors the value you create, and that value starts with how you see yourself. If you want to change the numbers out there, start by rewriting the definition within. No permission needed. No perfect moment. Just dare to look straight, upgrade, and believe. You weren't born for just enough, but to be someone no one else can replace. That's where true wealth begins. I often say, there's no progress if you only learn what you already know, and no one will guide you if you're not ready to be guided. People ask me, Jim, how did you find a great mentor like Mr. Shof? I half joke, half truth. I got him because I finally shut up and learned. When I was young, I was argumentative, not defiant. But I always thought, I know that when people suggested reading books, I thought, I'm busy. When they talked about discipline, I said, I'm fine. All I knew was a stagnant life, barely enough income, dreams gathering dust in the attic. Then I met someone who lived differently. In speech, I thought, presence. Instead of debating, I started asking, what can I learn from him? A mentor isn't a title, it's a mirror. They don't come to make you comfortable. They come to stir, challenge, say the things you haven't dared hear from yourself, but you won't see them if you don't set your ego aside. A full mind can't receive, a full cup can't hold more. To learn, you must stop proving what you know and get curious about what you don't. I remember when Mr. Shof asked me, Jim, do you know why you're not successful? I wanted to blame my poor background, uneducated parents, wrong place, wrong time. But I held back. For the first time, I said, I don't know. See, but I'm ready to learn. That moment opened a door, and he stepped in, not with flashy teaching, but with questions, with silence that forced me to think, with simple advice. Read daily, write your thoughts, practice speaking, so others want to listen. A true mentor doesn't give you the path, they give you eyes to see it. They don't lead you by the hand, they light a stretch of the way. The rest is up to you. Many today seek mentors like shopping. Who's the best? Wrong question. Ask, am I a worthy student yet? Mentors aren't hidden in YouTube videos. They're in the advice you ignored, the book you meant to read but didn't, the person living true beside you whom you never asked. How did you learn that? Want to meet a mentor? Be a great student. Ask questions instead of declaring. Write down lessons after experiences. Be grateful, not expectant. Learn from the simple. I learned discipline from how Mr. Shof polished his shoes before bed. I learned appreciation from how he thanked waiters. I learned inspiration not from his lectures, but from how he lived. There's a saying I love. When the student is ready, the teacher appears, I'll add, and when the student becomes humble, the lesson stays. You can search the world for a guide, but you won't go far if you think I know that I tried that. That won't work. Wisdom doesn't come from age. It comes from readiness. Sometimes the mentor you need is your latest failure, a child's innocent question, or the small voice inside saying, try again, but learn for real this time. I took nearly 26 years to learn. Knowledge doesn't advance you without a learning spirit. Learning isn't note-taking, it's transformation. It's changing a habit, apologizing when you're wrong, trying again with a different heart. Mentors don't come when you complain. They come when you awaken. Sometimes the first mentor is you. When you choose to be honest, listen, and commit to learning daily as if you know nothing. The stronger the student, the clearer the mentor appears. Then you won't need to seek them. You'll see. The world around you is full of lessons. It's just whether you notice. I once stood on stage and told thousands, if you hold tight to everything, you'll keep nothing. But when you dare let go of what you fear losing most, life gives you something greater. Sometimes the room went silent because deep down, everyone has something they're afraid to lose. A job, an image, a false stability, a too familiar relationship, even if it no longer serves your growth. Most of what stops us from true wealth isn't lack of opportunity, but too much fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of losing approval, fear of losing safety. But no success journey avoids loss. You lose friends who don't share your vision, lose part of your ego to learn anew, let go of easy habits to build discipline, sometimes lose certainty to touch something more meaningful. I remember deciding to leave my first company, 6 years with a steady salary. Friends called me crazy. Family called it risky. I was scared. I had no map. But deep down, I knew. Staying meant living safely, never knowing my true potential. So I left, not because I was brave, but because I didn't want to die old wondering, what if I'd tried? Sometimes what you fear losing most is what's holding you back from a worthier life. You cling to stability and lose freedom. You hold on to familiarity and miss a true partner. You stay loyal to your old self and turn away from who you could be. I asked someone, if you feared nothing, what would you do? Without thinking, he said, I'd start over. I'd learn from scratch. I'd say what I really think. I looked in his eyes and said, then fear is your life's boss. No one reaches wealth without big decisions, ones where a mistake could cost much. But they act, not because they're reckless, but because they know the cost of not risking is greater, a dim life. I've said, the biggest risk is not daring to risk. If you wait until fear's gone, you'll wait forever. Instead, learn to act while fear's still there. Courage isn't fearlessness. It's doing what's needed with fear beside you. Look at a farmer sowing seeds. He knows rain might fail. Soil might be poor. The crop might not grow, but he sows because he knows no sowing, no harvest. Life's the same. If you don't sow dreams, courage, new decisions, don't expect a different reality. And one more thing, sometimes loss is a gift. I've lost plenty, money, opportunities, reputation. Those losses taught me the deepest lesson. Your true value isn't in what you hold, it's in who you become when you have nothing to cling to. When you learn that, life can't control you with fear. You'll know. Even if you lose, you can start again. And next time, you'll build stronger, freer, a truer. Ask yourself honestly, what do you fear losing most? And what in you needs to die for a new you to be born? You may not need to lose everything, but you need to dare bet something big to prove to yourself you're ready. Because when you dare lose, you're given freedom. And when you're free, nothing can stop you from the life you know you deserve. That's the turning point. Every successful person passes, not when they have more, but when they dare let go of more. If you're reading this, you might be at that threshold. Don't turn back. Step forward, because what you truly fear losing might be what's keeping you from all you could become. One day, you'll sit in silence, no longer caring what others think, no longer needing praise, no longer needing to outshine anyone to feel worthy. That day, you're truly free. I used to want to prove myself, prove I was successful, capable, respected. In the early years after meeting Mr. Schoaf, I worked like mad, not just to rise, but to avoid being looked down on. I dressed sharply, not just for style, but so people would see Jim Rohn is different now. I spoke eloquently, lectured clearly, not just to inspire, but for applause. I succeeded, sure, but sometimes I was tired of maintaining an image, tired of living for others' expectations more than my own truth. Once, in a private session, a young man asked, "Mr. Jim, when will I feel enough?" I looked at him and said, "When you no longer need to prove anything, that's when you have it all." I said that from my own experience. The greatest danger isn't failure, it's success built on needing validation. When success is just to prove you're worthy, better than others, important, you're still dependent on eyes, praise, the world's measures. But when you succeed because you want to live true to your ability, values, kindness, you step into a different freedom, peace. I've seen very rich, famous people still restless. They can't rest, can't pause, fearing others will pass them. They wear designer clothes, live in mansions, drive luxury cars, not because they need them, but because they fear being looked down on without them. That's not wealth. That's a gilded prison. The truly free don't need to be better than anyone, understood or remembered after they're gone. They do right because it's right. They're kind, not to be called good, but because they won't live otherwise. They're quiet in a small house, but their heart shines like the sun. That's where I hope you reach. The greatest freedom is waking each morning, not worrying who will accept me today, but asking, how will I live today to not betray myself? Then you no longer live to be chosen, you live to choose. No need for praise. You work hard. No need for recognition. You give good. No need for belief. You walk your path because you know truth doesn't need noise. Light doesn't need ads. And you don't need to prove. I've lived long enough to see the more you try to prove, the less you're yourself. The less you need acceptance, the more you're truly loved. The more you do right quietly, the more you're trusted. Life doesn't count applause. It measures how often you live true when no one knows. So if you're doing something to be seen, I ask, is this the path you chose? Or are you walking for someone's nod? Stop. Breathe deeply. Ask. If no one praises, no one says, do I still want this? If yes, that's the real you. Be someone who needs to prove nothing because you know who you are. Be free, living from within out, not from others' eyes. And when you reach that, you don't just succeed, you live. And you'll see, no wealth surpasses the peace of not needing to prove. That's when you start living truly free. I pray you reach that with honest, humble, deep steps. If there's one thing I've learned after over 40 years of teaching, living, observing, and failing, it's this. The greatest journey isn't from poor to rich, but from fear to freedom, from living for others' eyes to living truly for yourself. It's a kiet journey, no ribbon cutting, no applause. But inside you, something changes forever. You no longer need approval because you approve of yourself. You don't need validation because you found its root. You don't need to hoard to feel enough because you know enough is when your heart isn't dragged by craving or fear. That freedom, it's the most enduring wealth. I've advised, don't wish things were easier, wish you were better. Now, I add, and don't try to be understood more. Learn to understand yourself deeper. Because once you know yourself, you live with calm, gratitude, and strength. No one can take, wealth isn't a destination, it's an inner state. It's not about how much you have, but what still controls you when nothing outside decides your inner joy. That's when you own what matters most. Now, take a quiet moment, silence the noise, drop the roles, expectations, and what others said you should be. Return to yourself. Ask if no one knows, sees, or claps. Do I still want this life? If yes, congratulations. You've touched freedom. You've tasted the wealth no one can steal. I don't write this to move you, but to make you pause and think, what do you need to let go to be truly light? What are you afraid to lose that's ruling your life? How would you live if you didn't need to prove anything? Let this be a door. But stepping through, that's you. No one can live for you. No one can give you freedom if you haven't given it to yourself. So, as you leave this, I don't hope you memorize every word. Just one thing. True wealth isn't having it all. It's when you can lose everything and still have yourself. If you keep yourself, you're never truly poor. You're just starting a new journey, this time from within out. That's the worthiest journey I know. Where are you on that journey? What's stopping you right now? Hold that change. Let it lead you further than any achievement. Because in the end, you don't become what you dream. You become what you choose daily. I'm Jim Rohn, and I wish you the courage to choose what truly matters because you're worthy, and you can always start right now.